Hi, I'm Julia Angwin, the founder of Proof News. Thanks for watching the very first episode of our Proof Ingredient series. In this series, I will talk to journalists, researchers, and content creators about what their investigations are made of. In today's world, everything on our social media feeds looks like news, but not all of it is nutritious information. Some of it is more like junk food. We think audiences need to understand the ingredients of their news, so we've developed an ingredients label. It shows the key elements of our work: the hypothesis, the sample size, techniques, key findings, and limitations. Hopefully, these ingredients help you evaluate our work and give you a framework for judging other news, too. We're going to kick off the series with Proof News investigative reporter Annie Gilbertson. She just wrapped up a groundbreaking investigation into AI's use of YouTube content without the consent of creators. YouTubers have long wondered whether their work has been scraped by the leading AI companies, but Annie is the first to prove it. She found that big companies including Apple, Anthropic, Nvidia, and Bloomberg have all used a dataset containing the transcripts to more than 170,000 YouTube videos. If you want to know if your video or your favorite YouTuber's video was used, you can search the dataset on our website, proofnews.org. Meanwhile, Annie's going to walk us through the ingredients of our investigation. Annie, welcome to Proof Ingredients.
Hi, Julia. Great to be with you.
It's so great to have you, and I would love if you could just start with introducing yourself, a little bit of your background. Where are you joining us from today?
I am in Berkeley, California. I'm an investigative reporter, and I've been based in California for the last decade or so. And now I'm in the Bay Area, the home of big tech.
That's right. And you're not a big tech reporter, though, as a specialty, right? This is
I come from good government accountability reporting, right?
Yeah.
Like public service news, and I try to bring that philosophy to tech reporting too, because it increasingly governs so much of our life and impacts so much of our daily work.
Exactly. They are essentially a new form of government, right? They police what we see, what we read. Their decisions really govern so much of the world. So government accountability background is a good one. So for the past few months, you and Proof News contributor Alex Reisner have been looking into this idea that big tech companies have been harvesting content from YouTube to train AI-generated content. Where and how did this investigation begin?
I think there's been a lot of questions swirling about the training data that's being fed into these AI models as we're seeing AI just proliferate in the last few years. Foundationally, you need to know that AI takes a lot of data to train. Like I was saying libraries worth, but I don't think that's even enough. Like I'm close to the University of Berkeley in their campus, like a whole campus of data's worth. Like a lot of data is used to train these AI models, and there's questions about what all they're using. And is it social media posts? Is it things from across the web? Is it copyrighted material? And as we've seen the proliferation of image and video generated AI content, I think there's been even more questions about whether YouTube is being used to train those models, right? So you're showing the models a bunch of videos so that it can then generate videos on the back end. And that's the question we were seeking to answer.
And the thing that was interesting was that Alex, your reporting partner for the story, had already sort of stumbled on this trove of data that was being used to train AI models. And he had written previously about the books that were basically scraped and put into this data set. And there was a subsequent lawsuit from the authors. So he had already dipped his toe into the world of like non-consensual AI training data.
Yeah, Alex's background was so helpful for this story. So he started looking at this compilation of training data called the Pile last year. And the Pile is made up of a ton of things. There's English Wikipedia's in there, the Enron emails are in there from when that was in litigation, and things like Common Crawl, which is really just like a capturing of the internet over the years. So it's just massive amounts of material. He was really interested in one data set called Books 3. And the question was, whose books are in there? No one knew. So his investigation last year for The Atlantic, he took the ISBN number and connected it to another database, which showed what are the titles, who are the authors, who all had their work taken as training data. And his findings were just explosive because it was some of the biggest authors you've heard of. It's George Saunders, it's Zadie Smith, it's Michael Pollan, Margaret Atwood. It's a ton of people who said that this work was used to train AI without their consent. And like you said, Julia, we saw after that story broke last summer, many creatives filing lawsuits against tech companies saying, like, look, you cannot be using our creative work without our consent. This is a violation of copyright. And tech companies in response arguing this is fair use.
Right. And we'll see how that plays out in court. But it's clear that the creators didn't know this was happening, and many of them didn't consent, right? And that's sort of what we were looking at with YouTube. So as you and I have talked about before, I really believe in going into a story with a hypothesis and sort of what is it that we're trying to prove? What is the hypothesis we're testing? So what was the hypothesis going into this one?
Our hypothesis was pretty simple. We suspected that YouTube videos had been used. So in the pile, this compilation of training data, where we saw pirated books had been compiled, there was another data set, and the title of this data set is YouTube subtitles. What do you think's in there? YouTube data, right? But nobody knew exactly whose videos were in there, what creators were affected, how many videos, and that's what we sought to figure out in this investigation.
And there were tons of data in there. So like when we talk about sample size, how big was this data set?
This was 6 gigabytes, around 500 million words. And this was also text, right? So this is YouTube subtitles. So it's the subtitles that are generated or sometimes uploaded on a YouTube video. So it's a text file, not images or video. And it also included translations like German and Japanese, Arabic, those kinds of things. So there's multiple languages in there. But you could see how having that size of information didn't make it exactly easy to know who all was in there.
Yeah. And so what was the technique that you guys used for figuring it out?
So Alex wrote a program. The data had been anonymized, but there was unique video IDs. And so he could connect, just like the ISBN numbers from books, connect the unique video IDs over to the actual videos that are on YouTube and be able to then see what was the channel name, what was the video title, who uploaded it, and we could watch the videos. And suddenly we had the whole library where we could click through and know exactly what creators were affected by this data grab.
Yeah. And so what did you find? How many videos were taken? What creators, what were the biggest channels that were taken?
It's more than 170,000 videos, a ton of videos. I would say a huge block of that content is going to be education labeled channels. So that's Khan Academy, that's stuff from universities like MIT and Berkeley. We also saw stuff from news organizations like the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, NPR, BBC, and we saw individual YouTube creators that were in there, just YouTube stars, people that is their livelihood, including Marques Brownlee, PewDiePie, Mr. Beast. These are some of the biggest names in YouTube.
Yeah, so this is really kind of like a top hits of YouTube data set that you have. And when you reached out to these creators, did any of them know that their videos were taken? What was the reaction?
We reached out to all the creators that we named in our story, and some of them didn't get back to us. Those that we did talk to, none of them knew their work had been taken. Many people were quite concerned that we brought them this information and said, like, look, like, at a baseline, I should be asked when my work is used. If tech companies are going to be making money off of these AI products, should I be compensated for my work being used to build them? And they also voiced concerns just about losing control of their creative work and not knowing how it's being used, right? Like this data set in particular has gone all over the internet. It's gone in so many people's hands. And some of the creators I spoke to just said, how is my content being used to generate maybe mimicking or fake content or something that I have no idea and would be concerned to see on the internet.
Yeah, and it's also true right now that like the AI companies are starting to cut deals where they pay people for their sort of retroactively pay people for content that they've already taken for training. And so I can imagine some YouTubers would want to maybe seek that compensation too. So we'll see if that happens. I think the interesting question though with this data set was it was sort of public, right? It's like out there in the public sphere, the YouTube subtitles data set, but hard to access if you really weren't technically proficient. And when you guys first found it, it wasn't really clear if anyone was using it, but you were able to confirm that some of the biggest companies were using it. Tell us who's using these data, the YouTube data, and how you were able to prove that.
Yeah, companies are not exactly forthcoming about what's in their training data. It's possibly the litigious environment that's now a reality around training data. It could be a contributing factor, as well as the fact that they really see their training data as a competitive advantage. The better your training data, research shows that you can build better models. So they're very secretive, not forthcoming. And so I had to spend days of my life, which is the job of a investigative journalist, going through what we could see from these companies about how they train their models, including research papers that they put out, as well as posts on GitHub and where they just outline what's going into these models as they're building them. And we found several companies had tapped the pile, which is the compilation that includes YouTube subtitles, including Anthropic, Apple, Nvidia, Bloomberg, Salesforce, Databricks. These are some of the most profitable companies on the planet using this data. We asked all these companies, about their use of this work. Salesforce said that they use the pile to train a model for research, but we also found that they later released that model open source. Anthropic also confirmed that they used it, though they denied any wrongdoing. And the rest of the companies either didn't respond or declined to comment.
And I believe Anthropic was using it for their Claude chatbot that people may or may not know. It's probably the most public facing. It's one of the top competitors to ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's right. And they confirmed that use.
Yeah, so you could have, if you've used Claude, you've maybe already sort of tapped into this, the results of this data set. So let's talk about limitations. There's always limitations to our findings and investigations. There's like only so much we can know. So what was it that we couldn't get to the bottom of here?
I can't be sure that we know all the companies that have used this data set. Or all the models that this data set has been fed into. The truth is that there aren't rules that require these companies to make their training data public or even notify the people whose data is being used in their training. So that's a limitation. There's dozens of notable AI models that are coming out every single year. And this particular data set, the YouTube data set, was published in 2020. It could be a lot bigger of a list.
Yeah, I mean, very likely it is, because we saw the New York Times did a big story about how OpenAI had built its own special tool to collect data from YouTube, right? So YouTube data is very valuable, and companies have been trying every which way to get it.
Yeah, it's like, I think I read this morning that it's 14 billion videos. Like, that's a lot of content. You've got scripted, you've got unscripted, you've got people talking, all kinds of education and news organizations are on there, as well as just regular people. And if you're training models to generate sound and video like regular people, you can see how this repository of data would be extremely valuable.
Right. If you want to learn how to talk like a human, like why not watch a bunch of humans talking on video, right?
Exactly.
So why is it important to do this type of investigation? Like, what are the moral questions at play here that it's really important for the public to know?
I think the central question here is whether tech companies building these AI models are allowed to take whatever data they want, especially without telling people. We are living in an environment where there is so much of our work and our material that is exposed online. If you think about your social media posts, if you think about the reviews you're writing on Google Maps for a restaurant, if you think about the content that you're uploading to Instagram or YouTube, all of this is now potentially exposed to AI to gather and use as their training data. And I think that that is really like a fundamental like shift in sort of what we can expect from our posts online. And I think we as a country and should talk about sort of what rules do we want to impose around this type of data grabs, and what rules should the AI companies be following.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I always think of, because, as journalists, our work is also, I'm sure, swept up into all these systems. And I always feel like, are we just like unpaid workers for these companies? Like, I mean, this is essentially what they're doing, right? They're taking our work, they're not paying us, and then they're going to go make money off of it, especially for us as journalists while our industry is collapsing.
I think many entertainers also feel the same way, especially YouTube people who are influencers online. When a lot of that work may in the future come to compete directly against AI generated content, just like journalists foresee that there's going to be AI generated content, or already are seeing AI competition for traffic. So given the competition factors, I think that that also heightens the issues here, and also the privacy issues too. Because if we're talking about social media posts, like my accounts are private, but I do post pictures of my kid, and it's like it's odd to think about those images being fed into AI and then later used to generate some composite image of what a 2-year-old boy would look like.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we haven't talked about, right, is that some of the channels you found in the YouTube data set had subsequently been deleted, but it seems as though they were already ingested into this system, right? So somebody could have tried to remove their content, but it's still taken by AI. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, there's several incidents. I would say actually thousands of videos that we couldn't identify because they had been taken off of YouTube. So here's an example of, for whatever reason, it was taken down or the creator deleted it, and it somehow now has the second life where it is existing with as training data for these models, with the creators have no control over how it's being used.
It's like zombie content. Come back to life. So thank you so much. We have one last question we're going to ask of all of our guests, which is, what kind of content do you watch on YouTube or TikTok? Who are your favorite creators?
So if before this story, if you would have looked at my YouTube history and my recommendation, it would have been Thomas the Tank Engine and Sesame Street. And you could probably guess as to why. But I did find this incredible Korean American cook who her data was taken in YouTube subtitles. Her name is Monchi, and she's amazing. She has taught me how to make fried tofu and fried chicken. I'm somebody who has lived in the South for many years and was very proud of my Southern fried chicken. But her Korean fried chicken might be even better. So I would recommend checking that out.
Ooh, sounds tasty. Okay, well, I'll check it out. Thank you so much for joining us on our first Proof Ingredients video. You can learn more about her amazing investigation on proofnews.org and on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching.
Thanks, Julia.